I'll wave you in if I need to, right? I'll wave you in. If you if you're gonna be fine. It'll be fine. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, Chris Impellitteri on the Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. What an honor, Chris. Thanks for doing the gig with me today.
Hey, it's my honor, Louis. Anybody that's out there, helping us promote the new Impellitteri anthology, we are eternally grateful. So thank you
No,
guys.
we're grateful for the gift of your music over many, many, many years. So take us back to your early days. How
Well,
about
the
this?
early days.
Why did you pick up the guitar?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a little tragedy involved, so forgive me for the violins. Here we go. So when I was 9 years old, my mother and father, they passed away or they died. It was kind of a tragedy. It was a suicide. And so basically my grandparents, who thank God were, they were young. I love them. They were awesome. They kind of thought if I didn't find an outlet, something to express my internal rage in life, I'd probably end up in trouble. Right. So my grandmother took me to a music store, and I'll never forget. I walked into this music store. It's called Mundell's Music in Connecticut. And on the wall was a copy of a Gibson Les Paul in black and a copy of a Fender Stratocaster in cream. And although to this day I technically, play Fender Stratocasters or old Charvels, I actually chose the Les Paul. And I started taking lessons, and I immediately fell in love with the guitar. And I found the guitar really therapeutic. You know, I was terribly shy, and I found that with the guitar, I was able to convey my emotions right through the instrument. So I was able to harness this tremendous rage in my heart, and somehow that flowed out through my playing. And to this day, it gave me some sort of sonic identity, which I know is really weird to say, but that's kind of how the inception, how it started.
Actually, I think that's quite wise and obviously not the tragedy, but beautiful how you were able to, a lot of people. I'm almost reluctant to ask you, but both parents committed suicide?
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, there's a little technicality. So my mother, biological mother, and my biological father, they divorced at when I guess I was one. So I never knew the biological father. Then this guy Jim O'Malley comes in, marries my mother. He's like a tennis pro or whatever. He was not a nice guy. But so they get married. He adopts me, and so basically that was the parents, right? And then so like I said, it happened, but it was separate. My mother did it first, and she was just, I don't know if it was, she was just gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful girl, and just in an abusive marriage and all that stuff. So I don't know what happened. I was too young. I just, I basically went to bed. Say I went to bed on a Monday night, and I woke up Tuesday morning as an orphan. It was literally like that. So and again, people always, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's totally cool. I mean, it's so many years ago. It's in the past. But when people ask me, how did I end up starting this? What was kind of like the initiation of why I got into, music or whatever, that was the reason. It was systemic from that.
Uh, Chris, when I hear that and you talk about how you focus that like rage and into music and that sadness, etc. I can't say most people. I don't know but I do know a lot of people go a different route: drugs, alcohol, self harm, whatever. And yours was expressed in a really positive way, not just for you, but the gift of your music to the world. I think that's absolutely incredible story, and I'm really grateful that you shared that.
Yeah, look, many people around the world have it much worse, in their childhoods, and it breaks my heart. I wish them the best, right? And I was just really fortunate to that I had these, my grandparents who they're gone now, but they were really young at the time, and so I there were challenges, of course, in life, but they really gave me a purpose in life, and that's really it became, Chris Impellitteri, the rock guitarist,
Which is, again, was wonderful. And when you say that about a lot of people have it worse, and I've talked about this a lot on the show from my radio days, that I was sexually abused as a kid, and I remember it was suggested to go. Oh, I appreciate it, to go to groups, and I spoke on a panel once, and when you describe it, people will say yours was so much worse than mine, or whatever. And my response is, not for you when you were little. You don't compare. Well, and it doesn't help people, right? If I compare, my abuse was different than someone else's, therefore it was worse, therefore what? It was, and I'm not being argumentative with you. Sure, a lot of people have different situations, but that's horrific, what you described, and beautiful of how you channeled that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were so many dark periods of my early life. I mean, there was another one, and you talk about when people don't understand the rage, right? So a lot of people know me as this guitar player that tends to play a lot of very basically they call me a shredder, which is a silly term.
What a top shredder.
Okay,
I've done my homework. Maybe.
Well, I'm humbled and honored if people think that. There are many great shredders, but really what that is, for people don't know, it's really when you're playing, to simplify, you're just playing fast, right? You're playing all these scales very
really
quickly.
Fast.
It almost sounds like a flurry of bullets by a machine gun with the notes. But of course, you got to do it in a melodic context, and you got to control it and be very articulate with it. But for me, that rage that was in my life as a kid, it's like, dude, why do I have to go through this crap? It was kind of like my way of venting. And I guess it'd be very much like the way I play guitar is very much like when you take an artist, who had probably a similar background as a child, and he or she expresses themselves on a canvas, right? When they paint, so, it's kind of like the ship out to sea in a terrible storm, and you're in that boat and you're like,
but again, in a positive way, certainly for you, but then the music, a gift to the world. I just think that's incredible. That's incredible way of channeling. I'm going to repeat myself, but you think about how many people have gone a bad route from having any childhood trauma. Again, drugs, alcohol, self-abuse, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and I mean, it breaks your heart when you see kids that have no grandparents, no family, right?
Yeah.
And they go through a tragedy because, when I was a kid, my grandparents, and they did it in a loving manner. So when my parents died and they broke the news to me, they had to give me an option legally, and they did. They said, look, basically you can go live in a shelter, right? It was an option. They did it with love. They weren't doing it to be spiteful. They, of course, said, we want you to live with us, but we also have to legally let you know, if you want, you can go live in a homeless shelter, or rather an orphanage, whatever they called it.
Yeah.
Or we'd really prefer you live with us, blah, blah, blah. And so, it was a lot to take in. But like I say, I mean, someone said the other day, and I kind of repeated, it's true. It's like, I kind of feel like my life went from tragedy to triumph, so.
No doubt.
I'm here.
You are here and continuing to make music. And we're talking a little bit off air about you're working on a new album, which I think is very cool. We don't have to go further than that, but I think that's going to be in studio today, correct?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So let's talk about Wake the Beast, which was the 3 CD compilation album that was just released, not even 2 weeks ago.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So what's that like for you?
Well, Wake the Beast, this anthology that we're releasing, there's really a strategy and an intent. The reason we're doing this is because the body of our music has always solely been released in Japan and certain places in continental Europe, but we didn't really own the masters up until recently. Oh. And what happened was the success we've had, the luck, whatever, that we had in Japan, or still have to this day, and certain places in Europe, it kind of spilled over to other marketplaces. And a lot of people really became interested and intrigued with Impellitteri. The problem was they had to pay these exorbitant prices to buy our music, like via import or export or whatever, right? Especially in the old days when they're buying tangible copies of our music, like CDs, etc. So it always frustrated us because, we know these people have really become part of our family. They support the band, they love us, but, they're shelling a stupid amount of money out for our entire catalog. So we vowed, once we knew we had legal rights to our masters for specific countries, we would distribute the back catalog globally. And so it's really exciting for us because, look, for me, this music, what we're releasing now to the countries that have never really had access to it, with the exception, again, of the export or import thing, this is brand new to them. So it's kind of like they're discovering Impellitteri for the first time, which is really cool for us.
When you say Japan, I think it's cool for all of us. Tell me about Japan.
Japan is like a second home to Impellitteri. We have been so fortunate to have been embraced by the Japanese. I mean, people don't realize Japan, and I just did an interview the other day and they brought it to my attention. I didn't realize this. Japan is something like 120 million people, right? So the United States, which is the largest music market in the world, has what, about 330 in that range? So
Awesome.
Japan is a massive, massive territory and a very large music market. And we're just really fortunate enough, from the time we did our very first release, which was called the Impellitteri Black EP, which kind of established our sound of who we were sonically. From that point on through the next record, which followed, which was called Stand in Line, something happened. We might have been, maybe our music was, it was like the right music, the right songs, the right playing for the right time. And it just exploded in Japan. And, I mean, we've just had so much success there. We've sold a stupid amount of records. That's a nice way of me just saying, I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot. It's, I mean, we've played massive shows. I mean, the first show we ever played in Japan was at the Tokyo Dome, which was 65,000 people, so, the band we've just been really lucky to have been embraced by, by Japan. And we're talking everywhere in Japan, Osaka, Fukuoka, Sendai, Nagoya, Tokyo, Sapporo. You can go on and on. There's all these different major areas of Japan,
When you say lucky, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking with Chris Impellitteri, you provided them with something. And I'm not being argumentative. I appreciate your modesty, Chris. I've got to tell you, with all the successes that you've had, I certainly appreciate being humble and modest. Yet you obviously touched them deeply with your music. So I don't know, and again, I'm not arguing the word whether lucky or not, but you worked hard at it, and it obviously touched people very, very deeply, that you are so successful in Japan and selling, like you said, the stupid amount of records, but all the concerts and how well received you are received in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Is that luck? I don't know. I think it's talent and creativity. Again, I'm not being I sound like I'm not arguing with you. I appreciate you being humble and saying it was luck.
Yeah.
But wow,
well,
go ahead.
I think, Louis, what I'm trying to say is, so of course I would like to believe that it is our talent and it is our discipline and our dedication and our love for the music we create, right? Because we give it 100%. We do our very best. We don't, on our records, we don't put fillers. I mean, we will lose money making records if that's what it takes to make certain that the body of work is really strong. Meaning each song is just a great song, great production, great performance, all of that. And I think the Japanese appreciate that. I think they realize that, even though, yes, we're a heavy metal band, we work diligently. We work very hard. We're very disciplined to be the best we can be, right? And remember, Japan is a very educated society. So I've always had a theory over the years that it's possible the reason they embraced us was because it's, first of all, even though again we're heavy metal, the way I play guitar, it takes a lot of effort and dedication, many hours of practicing, learning music theory, learning how to, play various scales, how to implement those scales within certain, song structures, learning how to play in odd time signatures, learning how to be a great engineer, right? Working as a team because it's a band, it's not a solo artist. So, you've got four conflicting personalities or five people, and each one of us have very strong personalities. So it's working that way to kind of create this kind of like a musical masterpiece, right? That's always our goal. And so I think Japan, because they're an educated society, they hear that versus if we were just a traditional rock band playing three chords, just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I don't think it would go anywhere. I think we would have failed miserably. So it's because we are proficient musicians, right? Or I guess people say we're accomplished musicians, and we what we're told is we write really good songs. We have very strong melodic structure in our music, especially like the vocals. Vocals always have like these our choruses always kind of sound like it's an anthem, right? Something that, when the song ends, hopefully it's stuck in your head and you can't stop singing it, right? So that's part of the formula of our band. And of course I have all the crazy shredding guitar solos that's kind of influenced by guys like Al Di Meola all the way through Vivaldi, and then Rob, the way he sings, I mean, very few human beings can do that kind of singing. Same thing with our other singer who was in the band on a couple records named Graham Bonnet. I mean, both Rob and Graham, in my opinion, are two of the greatest vocalists in the world,
When you said influence, Al Di Meola, I hadn't thought about him or listened to, and I'm embarrassed to say it, probably a couple of decades. When you say influence, again, that type of, but you're also translating that influence to something entirely different. If anyone knows Al Di Meola, but I think I find it very interesting that that's one of the people musicians that you say influenced you.
Big time. I mean, so a lot of musicians, guitar players that follow me, they tell me that, they appreciate my skill, right? Because I can play really complicated passages very quickly.
Very quickly.
And
Very quickly.
You have to have perfect synchronization between your right and left hand, right? And so I learned a lot of that from, it's actually three players when we're talking about the speed thing. It would actually be initially John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola, and Paco de Lucia. And I learned, especially from Di Meola, how to attack the strings with my pick. So it's very percussive sounding, almost like a machine gun when you're playing a lot of notes, right? And they were really the forefathers of the whole speed thing, right? I know guys like, Yngwie, myself, Paul Gilbert, a handful of guys, we got a lot of credit for being the first guys doing shred, at least where people caught on to it, in like, I guess, the hard rock music, popular music, whatever. But the reality was we didn't initiate it. We didn't start. It was done long before us with guys like John McLaughlin, Di Meola, Paco, etc.
And I'm a huge John McLaughlin fan.
Oh,
huge for the very early days. I love John McLaughlin, and used to wonder. Again, this is when I was decades younger. How do you play so beautifully and that quickly as you do? It just, again, when you say John McLaughlin, it makes a lot of sense to me because I think about his guitar playing, the music with Mahavishnu Orchestra, solo, whatever, Shakti, whatever. And you were able to do that. And I just marvel. I know I keep saying this, Chris Impellitteri, but I marvel at that. Again, do I hack with a guitar? Yeah. Am I a musician? Absolutely not. But just understanding, again, when I played some electric guitar when I was, again, many decades ago, just marveling at that and watching you and hearing that is just amazing to me. Just incredible.
Well, thank you.
As one of the top shredders, I often wondered where that got, how the word shredding started. As you're saying, that's what they call it, but that's what they call it. Shredding.
It's probably, I think, because people think about the sound of someone shredding something with like a cheese grater, right?
Yeah.
Shredding, ripping
Yeah.
apart,
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest. I think it's a very odd term. I
I
was
do
never
too.
really truly comfortable with it, to be honest, but I know I've been called it. So I basically gave up and embraced it, right?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's,
but it's also, there's a danger in that too when people keep talking about Chris Impellitteri, the shredder, or the guitar hero, or whatever they call me. There's a danger in that, because what people need to understand, especially for those exploring or just hearing about us for the first time, which many people will with this new anthology, Impellitteri is a band. It has always been a band. It's not the Chris Impellitteri ego instrumental guitar show. It's about 4 or 5 guys contributing equally to this music. Now, albeit over the years, we've changed drummers a few times, but for the most part, the nucleus of the band are the same guys we've had for almost since the beginning, right? And so we've always been a band with, 4 or 5 personalities contributing, their soul to this music. So, my solos, I'm flattered that people put me in the company of all these other, wonderful players. But the important thing is, remember, when you're listening to this body of work, it's more than just Chris Impellitteri. It's Rob Rock, it's James Pulli. On a lot of the tracks, there's Glenn Sobel, who now is with Alice Cooper and Johnny Depp's Hollywood Vampires. He played drums on multiple records and tours. There's Ken Mary, another amazing drummer. There's Lonnie Silva. There's Pat Torpey, God rest his soul. Pat was the drummer of the band Mr. Big, and he also played with Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. But he's the drummer like on the Stand in Line stuff. So, we've had some amazing people, in the band over the years.
And I like how you say that again, how you don't want to take all the credit. It's a compilation of amazing musicians that come together. Again, I really admire that about you. I've said this, let me say, I don't know our mutual friend John, when we connected about you, and I just don't know, with all the successes, what you were going to be like. Ego driven again, however, and your humility, I think, is wonderful. And I don't want to say rare, because I don't know all the musicians personally. I haven't had the opportunity to speak with them, hear music, see them, whatever. But I so admire that about you so much. Let's talk about, again, the 3 CD compilation. You're saying, again, it's going to be new to a lot of people. Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, obviously, our core fans, right? When the band really started, it's like later part of the 80s, right? And we were embraced pretty heavily on MTV at the time, which was very popular for you
Yeah.
kids. It was a very popular music show that
Headbangers.
played music videos all day long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it
I
was watched
remember
by
when they
millions
launched.
of,
I remember when
yeah.
they launched, when MTV launched.
Yeah, and think about it. I mean, when we were on MTV, I remember they flew me to New York City to be the host of the Headbangers Ball for one of the
Yeah.
weekends. And I remember flying there and asking my manager, it's like, so what kind of reach do they have? And at that time, I think they told me MTV was in 25 million households, you know? So when they started playing our Stand in Line video instantaneously overnight, I mean, it was shocking how many people knew about our band, you know? But it was interesting too, because when Impellitteri started, we were much more of almost, I jokingly say we're almost like a thrash band, because we're playing, this really speedy metal, but with almost like Queen and Boston type vocals, the big 1-1-3-5, meaning harmony, structures in our choruses, and then all the technical, soloing, all that stuff. So with us, we had an identity crisis, or people had an identity crisis for us. We were never a hair band, even though we had the hair, but we were never part of that scene.
Yeah.
We weren't quite as thrashy as like early Metallica, you know, or Exodus, or, you know, Slayer, bands like that. So people were like, what do we do with these guys? But either way, it started with a really nice, it gave us a nice foundation. And with those first two records in Japan, our popularity just exploded, right? And but we also realized it was at the end of the 80s, heavy metal for the most part ran into a brick wall. And most of our peers that started with us, their bands came to an end and they didn't survive. Um, and so we got this is where I say it has to be luck, because there were many great bands that were just as good as us that just didn't make it. But what happened is in the late 80s, it's that style of music or anything associated with that style of music was no longer embraced in the United States. It was actually made fun of for the most part, right?
That's
But
interesting.
in Japan, we just took off. And forgive me, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly, but you
Please
know,
go
where
ahead.
I'm saying this music's new, for the most part, since that period of time, we've been able to build this very large following, of course, in Asia, and not just Japan. Places like Korea were massive, places like that, but also in certain places in continental Europe, the band's gotten really popular. So, but in America, especially the
Yeah.
new generation of kids, you know,
Yeah.
they probably think Impellitteri is a disease. They're like, what is that? You know? So, so for them, this is brand new, and this is what's exciting for us, because it's going to be the first time they're going to hear songs like "Victim of the System," right? Or our very first song we ever recorded, "Lost in the Rain." You know, everything is on this album, "Perfect Crime." You know, so
Again, new to a lot of people in America and certainly younger generation. And I wasn't aware about it kind of hitting heavy metal, hitting a wall. Uh, I was not a heavy metal fan back then. I listened to some, I appreciated it, but it wasn't what I was listening to frequently. And again, with MTV, I like how you said they used to play music videos, and it's interesting what it's become. Again, I
yeah.
can't judge it. Obviously, economics uh,
Well,
dictate for them.
let me tell you how messed up pop culture is, especially in places like America and even Europe. So I think it was around the time when we did a record called "Answer the Master" or "Screaming Symphony." It was one of those two records, and we were having so much success in Japan. So I had an attorney in Los Angeles, very well-known, prominent music attorney, and he was friends. I'm not going to say the person, but he was friends with the manager of one of the biggest heavy metal bands in history. And I remember the attorney wanted us to get managed by this guy. So he calls his buddy up. We start talking. The manager calls me. He was listening to our music. He was really complimentary. He's like, dude, I love this stuff is great. Really love the music. But then he goes, and your vocals, though, they sound like Boston. And I was like, oh, thank you. I mean, dude, to be able to sing like Brad Delp of Boston and have those kind of choruses, that takes an amazing talent to be able to do that. And I went, oh, thanks, man. He goes, what do you mean? And I go, well, they're awesome. And he goes, dude, no. He goes, that's not what kids want. You know, at this point, you have a lot of rap rock coming in, Limp Bizkit, stuff like that. And he was actually being derogatory towards it. And I'm thinking, what? And literally, it was like one of those things where, like, yeah, kids are not going to be into this. And I remember getting off the phone thinking, wow, did I just hear that? This is so. I mean, so what do you want me to do? Get rid of our singer and get in some rapper or some guy that can't sing to save his life who grunts,
Yeah.
you know? And that to me was like an aha moment of the realization of just realizing how lucky we were to have been embraced by Japan, because in Japan, that stuff, although, yeah, pop culture does kind of flow into Japan and they embrace some of it. But for the most part, Impellitteri was way bigger than a lot of those mega bands that were like the 90s rock bands in America, because we stuck to our guns, you know, and the vocal stayed, those big, beautiful 3-part harmonies and all that. That's part of our sound. Clean, you know?
When you again global officially license a full catalog and it's and so again, Wake the Beast, the 3 CD compilation. picking the songs with that huge catalog that you have. What was that like? I mean, was it hard? Was it easy? It's like, well, I know we need to do. What was that like?
It's always a little challenging because picking your favorite song is like picking your favorite child. I love both my daughters equally, right? So, the challenger was like, yeah, which song? But I guess ultimately it actually became quite easier than I thought initially because we know over the years we've toured so much in places like Japan or playing the big festivals in Europe or whatever. We know what the kids like. Like for example, the last show we did before the pandemic, we headlined a thing called the Busan Rock Festival in Korea, and I think something like 30,000 people came to see us. And when you're playing these shows, you look out in the audience and you can see the kids, and when they're singing every word of the song, right, of the lyric, you've touched a nerve, right? So over the years, touring, playing live, especially in places like Japan, we get a sense of what our fan base have really embraced and what they're not so sure of, right? So the songs that, have been kind of like staples of our live concerts, we knew that had to be part of the anthology. And then we also cheated. A lot of times our fans or kids, whatever, will rip a file or, digital, right? Take one of our songs and they'll upload it on like a YouTube. And then we'll go and we'll read the comments. And so, in the comment section, if they say something to the effect of, oh my God, this is the greatest metal band ever, why aren't they bigger? You probably realize, oh, that song resonates with them. That's probably a good song to be on the anthology. Versus if you read a comment and they go, oh, this band sucks, what does anybody think in them? Then you're probably thinking, yeah, it's probably not the best song.
That's interesting that you see people in Asia singing the lyrics to Impellitteri. Correct? I mean, I think it's kind of,
think about it. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, in Japan, I mean, English is their second language.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, and people also don't realize Japan is really culturally diverse. We go there and I've been obviously I've been at Impellitteri shows because I'm playing, but
because you are Impellitteri.
I've performed, and I look out in the audience and I'll see these blonde girls from like Sweden or Finland or whatever, people from Germany. I mean, it's very culturally diverse there. So, English is kind of like that go-to language because everybody has to communicate,
That's interesting. I also appreciate your sense of humor. Let's talk about availability of Wake the Beast. Where do people...
Availability? It should be hopefully everywhere. I just saw an advertisement available at Target. I was like, Target,
wow.
All right.
That's
Target's
wonderful.
getting some Impellitteri metal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So people can go
Amazon,
to
Target,
Amazon,
all those
certainly
places.
Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it online, so forgive me. I mean, I just, occasionally I'll Google, see who's distributing. But yeah, it seems to be everywhere at this point.
Hey, Chris, when thinking about that everywhere, like you said, Target, and just released on the 30th of September, that's fantastic. That's very quickly spreading because the music is so good.
Well, thank you. I mean,
thank you. You're doing it. Thank you. This is
I'm really happy with I really like what Global Rock are doing because we're still signed with JVC Victor for all of Asia, Japan, etc. But we're also on a label called Frontiers, and that's for United States of America and North America. So our most recent records, which are called Venom and The Nature of the Beast, those are the most recent records. Those are actually on Frontiers and JVC Victor. The back catalog, right, is with Global Rock, and we chose Global Rock. And believe me, we could have gone to I'm sure we could have gone to like a Warner Brothers or some of the other bigger labels, sure. But I don't think they would have really given us the attention and love we need, right? So Global Rock, Brian was really passionate about our band, really seemed to love our music. And, that's one thing we always look for when we work with business partners. We don't care how big you are. It's more what we care about is your vision, your loyalty, right, and your dedication, right? And so when you find people that really believe in what you do, those are the partners we want to be with. So far, they're doing a good job.
Yeah, obviously that's and I love that. It's not you not wanting to go necessarily to the big, if the big places have the passion, etc., the loyalty, that's fine. But I'm guessing that's rare with the big distributors. Yet how you choose them and why you choose them is really interesting. Again, very thoughtful. I've got to ask you, I've got some emails also. What about through the pandemic? What was the pandemic like for you? So used to being out there and then not. For you and the band, what was that like for you guys?
So during the pandemic, it was actually, now, first of all, my condolences to anybody that lost loved ones in the pandemic. God bless everyone. It's just a terrible time in our history. But at that time, it was also very timely for us because we had come back from our Japan run and doing some, I think, festivals in Europe, I think, and then, of course, doing other parts of Asia. And it was time to write a new record. So, we basically probably had a year off. And then through the middle of the pandemic, we started writing for the new record that we still are in the middle of recording now, which will probably be released probably later, maybe middle of 2023 or towards the summer of 2023, followed by a tour. But
That's
so really, I guess where I'm going with this, right when the pandemic happened, it was a time where we were kind of self-absorbed, locked away into our dungeons writing.
again, when you self-absorbed, locked in dungeons writing, yet you still are working on this new and continuing to work on it and then touring, because obviously nobody was touring during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
No one that I'm aware of. I don't know where, maybe somewhere else in the world, but certainly not here. The tour, how much in advance of the release of the new album, the new record, do you plan the tour?
We're going to play anywhere and everywhere that will have us. That's really our new commitment. It's time.
Beautiful.
And now that the body of work is released globally, now we have an excuse to do it. Right. So it's not like we haven't been playing. I mean, we have, and we've certainly played some very large places. Like, a few years back, we did Spain for the first time. We did a thing called the Rock Fest in Barcelona, which I think the headliner was Iron Maiden. We were pretty close to top of the bill. It was us, and I don't know if Anthrax played before us or after us, but it was like 20 or 30,000 people. We played Germany. We did, I think it was called Bang Your Head Festival. I think it was us and Slayer and bands like that. And then, a few years earlier, we did Sweden Rock Festival. It was Impellitteri, Black Sabbath, Journey, and Dream Theater. And so we've done some really amazing gigs, for the band. But there's many markets we haven't reached. And so really our commitment now is, once we get the next record out, is to go out and play all the countries that we really haven't played. And of course, we will continue to play the countries we do play, of course.
Of course.
In addition. So we're probably going to be playing a lot of dates in 2023, 24, and so on.
That'll be great. That'll be great. I'm sure you're going to be somewhere in this area. What would be great. Again, the 3 CD compilation album, as you said, available everywhere. Wake the Beast. Again, being an old guy, I like to be able to go into a store and buy things. I understand buying online. I get all that, but I'm an old guy, so I like that, to go in and look at it and feel it and then pay for it.
Oh yeah, well that's always going to be challenging, because usually when you go into the stores that will distribute music, period, that is where it's going to be reserved for Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber. It's just not American pop culture, But the cool thing with this is you can order this stuff and get it tangible. If you want tangible product like CD or whatever, you'll have it. I'm not sure if they're doing a run with vinyl or not. I mean, a lot of us audiophiles love vinyl, of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. But I think about being able to order it anywhere. Again, I appreciate the convenience of it. And I understand it. It's great. Yet I love the fact that it's going to be in Target. That's in Target. I think that's wonderful. You are an incredible guy. I love the personality, the humor, your modesty. humble, and your thoughtfulness, Chris Impellitteri, the thoughtfulness about deeply thoughtful and analytic about things and how you choose, how you do what you do. I so admire you for that. And I have heard Wake the Beast, and I love it. And again, my music taste can be very diverse, and a lot of people would say Louis wouldn't like metal, wouldn't. You've got to hear Wake the Beast. You've got to hear Wake the Beast. And I'm eager also for the release of the new album. Maybe you'll come back and do the gig with me again. I've loved this, Chris Impellitteri. I have loved this. I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Louis, it's my pleasure and my honor. And thank you so much for helping us promote this.
My honor. I'll be continuing to do that, Chris. Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Okay, Louis.
Thank you. Bye. How wonderful. What a great person, everything. And the music, I will tell you again, from